Welcome, everybody, to the Stoned on Sports podcast. My name is Matt. Really happy you decided to join us today. And before we get things started, want to say a big thank you to all of our listeners, all of our subscribers, and of course, Rocky's Pizza. They are the official pizza of the Stoned on Sports podcast, and they are available in Swartz Creek, Michigan. Great food, great pies, great service, all at a great price. Go talk to Brandon. He'll get you hooked up. As always, I'm joined here by the outsiders, Kyle and Ramey. Ramey, how you doing, brother?
I am fantastic, Matt. Football is back. We're just coming off of what they call week 0 in college football, which really doesn't make any sense. It's week 1 or maybe 0.5. Notre Dame looked good. SC looked good. Had some games on, and we're just getting through the last bit of preseason NFL, and we'll be in a couple weeks having opening night with your guys' Lions and the Chiefs. So how excited are you, Kyle?
Super. Like, if they could win this game, I'd be like, I just want it to be a game. Put it that way. I want to get trounced on national television. First game of the season. That would be embarrassing for Dan Campbell and his crew. I don't want to see that. Just make it a game. Win or lose. I want them to win, but tough opponent.
Yeah. Super Bowl champs.
Defending Super Bowl champs. That's right. Also, Matt called us the outsiders. Which one of us is Pony Boy?
I think everybody knows who's Pony Boy.
Right. I die. Shit. How you been doing, dude? Been doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah, everything's
Sweet.
going good. Yeah.
Excited to talk about the most important position on the field, quarterbacks, fantasy preview. We're all going to talk about a flu. We're all going to talk about a few quarterbacks each, and I anticipate some good discussion and some stats and some good opinions on fantasy this year for quarterbacks.
Let's start up our quarterback conversation with the first quarterback off the board, going 16th overall. It's Patrick Mahomes, as a surprise to nobody. Last year, he went for 52-50, 41 touchdowns, completed 67.1% of his passes for an 8.1 YPA. He had a career low 15.4% bad throw percentage, too. So he really had what would statistically be probably his second best season. He's somebody he's put in his career year when he went for 5,050, his first full year as a starter. And he chips in 300 to 400 yards on the ground as well. He's not so much a running quarterback, but he is pretty mobile. He's athletic. He's athletic in the pocket. They've got question marks at receiver coming into the season this year, but the ever-present Travis Kelce is still going to be there to just vacuum up targets in the middle of the field and short yardage in the red zone, in the green zone. This year, I'm looking for something around 4,800 yards passing, 39 touchdowns, maybe another 325 to 350 yards on the ground as well.
Man, the receivers, they're being short on receivers. That didn't stop them last year. They lost their best receiver in the offseason, Tyreek Hill, and they're champs. I think they'll figure it out. I think they're just that talented. I think Sky Moore is going to take a leap, maybe not a huge leap, but a pretty good medium leap.
Would that be equivalent to a step?
Yeah, just a step, a half a step. But no, I think he's been getting a lot of works with a lot of snaps with the first string. Kadarius Toney's been injured. Fuck you, Matt. But it's Mahomes, dude. If he's there, your spot, you're planning to pick a quarterback, grab him. If it's a 2 QB league, try and grab him quick and get somebody like, Jesus, Goff or somebody later than that.
I would draft Jesus.
Jesus,
he can sling that pigskin.
I bet he can. I think it'd be a little tough to scramble in sandals, but maybe he can pull it off. He can walk on fucking water. So, fuck them sandals. But I'm not worried about the receiving room. I think Pacheco's also going to be solid again this year for them. Mahomes, Pickett.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. If he's there, you're not going to be sad if Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. So I think this was by design, right? He had all the weapons early in his career. They gave him the big deal, knowing that as he progresses and matures as a quarterback, he's going to have to manufacture some of those throws, which he does a great job of. He's got Kelsey, but as far as the receivers, it's going to be on Mahomes to put the ball in the right spots for these receivers that are a little less experienced. Number 2 off the board, right about 21st in the rankings, is Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Last year, he played all 16 games. And yes, all 16 games because of the missed game with the
Damar Hamlin.
Bengals.
Yeah,
Injury.
Damar Hamlin.
Bengals.
Yes,
Death.
yes. Yeah. Speaking of a resurrection story, call back to Jesus. He had a really nice year last year. Really great, not nice year, great year. Had 63% completion percentage, 4,283 yards, 35 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. He also had 762 yards on the ground for a 6.1 average and 7 touchdowns on the ground. My big thing is, can he sustain that amount of workload on the ground? I know we've talked about it in previous podcasts. They're going to have to figure out a way to be more judicious with him when he runs the ball, or else he's going to end up getting himself injured. It's just too much of a workload. He's a really good runner. He's a big dude. He can take the hits, but all it takes is one, and all of a sudden it could be a lost season for the Bills. So I look for him to have about 4,300 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, another 550 or so yards on the ground, and another 5 touchdowns rushing. So I think he reduces that workload a little bit, but I don't think he completely eliminates it. One of the other issues is the Stephon Diggs drama. If there's problems there, I could see that festering, especially if they don't get off to a hot start. Don't think that they'll go as far as to trade Stephon Diggs, just because there's a little bit of depth there in the receiving core, but not a ton, and he's a true number 1. So hopefully they can work through whatever issues they may have, if they're perceived or real, and he can have a great season.
Yeah, he did a lot last year with a blowout average offensive line. And his elbow was injured most of the season too. And he's a tough guy. He needs to be a man. Stephon Diggs needs to be a man, work out their differences, and try and win a fucking Super Bowl. You got some talent there. I think the offense is going to be running more through James Cook this year to try and take that pressure off of Allen trying to make a play.
My concerns with him are just his ball security. He turns the ball over quite a bit. And if you really fashion yourself as a serious Super Bowl contender, you're not going to get there if you can't take care of the ball.
Yeah. I mean, he is a one-man wrecking crew. He's going to be an MVP type candidate this year. I do worry about his ball security, but he is a fine quarterback. I would have him on my fantasy teams. All right, number 3 on the board is Jalen Hurts. I had him last year on my fantasy team. Boy, did I love it. He did miss a couple games last season. He had 3,700 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, and 6 picks, and ran for another 760 yards and 13 touchdowns. Averaged 25.2 fantasy points per game. Finished second in MVP voting. He's great. Dual threat quarterback that can run. He like the rushing touchdowns. It's a huge upside for him. The NFL didn't ban that rule on the push from behind for quarterbacks for sneaks and stuff, and they're going to do that again this year until somebody figures out how to fucking stop it. I like him for 3,900 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 picks. I'll say another 700 yards on the ground. I think I'll have a little regression in the touchdown total from that. I'll say 8 to 10. But I like him. Somebody I'm targeting again this year. I'd like to have him back again. That's an excellent team with excellent playmakers around it.
I remember you and Ramey had a little wager on whether or not Jalen Hurts was going to repeat his double-digit rushing touchdown production.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the under on 10 touchdowns for him. I think 8 is probably the right number. They remade their backfield there to try and give him some help. And they got really lucky, too, with both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith staying on the field so much.
And Goddard's a target share hog there too. I mean, they're fine playmakers all around. So
Yeah.
I expect them to be in the NFC Championship game again this year. See if somebody can beat him.
Yeah. And that rushing upside is really what makes him elite.
It is. It's fantastic. He grew so much last season. I expect him to do that again. He lost his offensive coordinator to your Colts, Ramey, but I think they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, they're set up for success. They have a great offensive line. Receivers are there. The running back by committee seems to work for them. And I mean, he's essentially another running back there with his ability in short yard situations. I don't blame you for loving having him on your fantasy team last year. Those bonus touchdowns, even if they're 1 yard touchdowns, I mean, they still count the same, right?
They sure did.
It really puts him into that upper echelon of QBs.
Unfortunately, he was injured in the games I needed him in the playoffs against co-host here, Matt, who never failed to stop telling me that he beat me and won the championship last season. Congrats again, asshole.
Rent free, buddy. You're the one that brought it up, not me. The number 4 quarterback off the board is really, really intriguing to me. He's going 37th overall. That's Joe Burrow. Last year, he threw for just under 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, completed 68.3% of his passes, and got pressured at a career low 16.5% of his dropbacks. So they made some improvements to the O-line, and they made some improvements to the O-line this season as well. That should only help to improve that number. The big reason that he is so intriguing to me is out of the top 5 quarterbacks, he's the only one that hasn't had his career year yet. Mahomes had his 50-50. I think we've seen the best that Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts are going to do. Lamar Jackson, he had his MVP run in 2019, but you haven't really seen that big blow up year from Joe Burrow yet. And I think this is the year. I'm looking for him to go for 5,300 yards, 45 touchdowns. I think he's going to end up as the QB1 this year. He's even going to chip in about 200 yards on the ground as well.
He's a fantastic quarterback. I love it.
Those are lofty numbers, but I agree. He's due for that kind of year. The Bengals are due. I think that they're going to go really deep into the playoffs and could potentially go back to the Super Bowl. It just feels like everything's set up for them. They fixed the offensive line. That was the big issue in the past, just the inability to protect him. They've got the weapons. I sound like a broken record with Hurts, but they've really set Burrow up to have an MVP type season this year.
And where he's being drafted, it makes it really easy to pair him up with either Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, depending on where you're drafting in the first round.
Yeah, if you can get a stack like that, that would help you very much in fantasy. It's an added bonus. Burrow led the league in PFF passing grade each of the last 2 seasons. I think he's going to get even better. We've got all these teams chasing these special athletes, AR, Justin Fields, all that. And Burrow, he just puts the ball the right place, the right time. And there's something to say for that. He's a special quarterback. I like him a lot.
Yeah, you need the mobility, but when it really comes down to it, you got to have a guy that can throw from the pocket. And that's exactly what he can do.
The NFL is all about passing right now. It's receiver heavy. And one league that me and Matt are in, our keeper league dynasty, there's the top 25 receivers. There's only 4 available in the draft next week. So they're all locked up on contracts or rookie deals. And it sucks. It ain't that way for the other positions.
Burrow's about to get paid too.
Yeah, he is. And Higgins.
Yeah.
Either there or somewhere else.
That's
the Colts
true.
should look at signing him.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah.
Let Pittman walk and bring in T. Higgins. I'd rather have T. Higgins than Pittman.
Any day. Huge upgrade. That would be big for you guys. You should write Ballard about that.
Be great if they could keep them both, because all I hear is how much cap room we have. All right, number 5 off the board, we've got Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens, coming off an injury. Last year, he only played 12 games, but he did have 203 completions, 62.3% completion percentage, 2,200 yards passing. 17 touchdowns. He had another 112 carries on the ground, which is where you carry the ball, for 764 yards. So he had a 6.8 yard rushing average and 5 touchdowns. This one's a curious one because of the changes on the team with the new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, the focus to make Lamar more of a more pure pocket passer. Don't know if he'll run as much, but when it comes right down to it, they're going to have to rely on his legs a little bit. He does have some weapons with OBJ and Zay Flowers, the rookie. The backfield is strong if they can get the contract situations figured out with J.K. Dobbins. I predict for him to go for about 3,500 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and another 800 yards on the ground with 4 rushing touchdowns. So I think that it's going to be a transitional year. I don't know that I'm as high on him as some people are. I think he'll have a solid season though.
If I had to draft him later and he slipped or whatever, I would probably grab him. The word is new there in Baltimore, like you said, new contract, new coordinator, new receivers. If one of those new receivers there, or the receivers that are there, could step up and actually be a true number 1 receiver, things could happen. Things could happen. I know that Matt will tell you can't throw to the outside. The film tells you that as well. Something could happen there, or it could be a complete fucking failure. I don't know, but somebody in that receiver room must step up for that season to be successful at Baltimore this year.
I think at the end of the day, he's just going to continue to feed Mark Andrews, regardless of who steps up on the outside, or if nobody steps up on the outside. He's been so damn consistent. I understand the Ravens are going to pass more, but this is still Lamar Jackson. He's going to run the ball. It'll be reduced a little bit, but maybe with the reduction in volume, he'll be a more efficient runner. Like I said, he's had his career year. He's not going to throw for 36 touchdown passes again. It's just not going to happen. I think he can hang out in the mid-20s, though.
They're really going to have to focus on that intermediate passing game with Andrews. Andrews will be a huge focus. He'll probably be the number 1 focus for Lamar when he is passing, but they really need to get him out of that mindset that whenever something goes wrong, he just takes off. It shows he's been injured. He was injured last year. He's been injured in the past. He's always missed a couple of games. Not that will change because it's the NFL, but he just, as he continues to get older, as we all do, you just can't rely on your legs as much as you have when he was in his first few years in the NFL.
The 6th QB off the board is Justin Herbert, going 39-40 overall. Had a nice season last year, 4,700 yards, 25 touchdowns, only 10 picks. He did finish QB 11, but there were declines in the board on yards per game, yards per attempt, and his touchdown rate. He did, however, have his best career completion percentage at 68.2%. That's all about to change. I think the doctor came into the house to fix this offense, Kellen Moore. I think that's the most impactful move the Chargers made this offseason. Moore specializes in quarterbacks that can push the ball down the field vertically, good decision-making skills, and an accurate arm. And if that doesn't scream Justin Herbert, I don't know what does. You'll see him in the 4th, beginning of the 5th round. I've seen some mocks all the way to the end of the 6th round. I like him for 4,800 yards. I think he's going to get 30 touchdowns this year, 12 picks. I like him this year too, just because of the Kellen Moore coming in. They're a perfect match in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's some room for upside in that 30 touchdown number too. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he finished with 35. A big undoing for the offense as a whole last season was injuries to Mike Williams and to Keenan Allen, and just Joe Lombardi's offense was getting pretty stale. It was really focused around the short and intermediate there around the line of scrimmage, and that's why you had somebody like Austin Eckler with 127 targets. It's going to be completely different this year. This offense is going to be perfect for Justin Herbert. He'll finish as a top 4 QB this year.
Yeah, he's primed for that. I hate to say breakout season, but it just seems like it's time. He got his money, he got his bag, and the change in offensive coordinator was was desperately needed. They needed to shake up what they do. I think the fact that Austin Eckler is so good out of the backfield catching is going to help the fantasy numbers for Herbert as well. It won't be to the tune of last year, but he's going to get some cheap and easy passing touchdowns by throwing those swing passes to Austin Eckler and having him break a couple tackles. So I'm high on Justin Herbert. I wouldn't be upset at all if he were my QB1.
Lucky number 7 off the board is Chicago Bears quarterback Justin Fields. I was fortunate enough to pick him up on a team and have him carry me to the playoffs last year. Little under 2,250 yards passing. He ran for over 1,100 yards rushing. And he did miss a couple games due to injury. I think you're going to see them dial back on his attempts this year. They brought in DJ Moore to help with his growth as a passer. So there's going to be some rearranging of his stats. I think total yardage wise will probably be similar. I think he'll come in just under 3,000 yards passing, and he'll be just under 1,000 yards rushing. We'll call it 800, 850. I don't think they're going to want him to carry the ball that much again this year.
If he runs for the amount of yards close to what he did last year, then something's not going well with his development. He's got to transition into more of a pocket passer, or not a pocket passer, but just a passer in general. And I think that they've put pieces in place with DJ Moore and even Cole Kmet. I think he's going to have a nice year too as a tight end. They're setting Fields up for success, and they've improved the line as well. So you hope he doesn't have to rely on his legs as much as he has in the past couple of years.
Yeah, they made improvements in the running back room too. So again, to make a point on this, his 1,143 rushing yards, 721 of those were on scrambles. That can't happen. I mean, it's fantasy outlook. That's good, but for a team outlook and his health, that's not good. It needs to get a little bit more to the mean there. But if he's there, I'm grabbing him just because of that rushing upside. He's very athletic quarterback.
Yeah, he's got a super high ceiling. I think his ceiling is like QB3 this year. But if we don't see the gains in the passing game and he doesn't run as much, now we're talking about maybe a low-end QB1 as his floor.
Next up at number 8, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence. Last year, he played in all 17 games. He had just over a 66% completion percentage, 4,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions. He also ran the ball a little bit. He had just under 300 yards rushing, but he had 5 touchdowns on the ground. So there was a little bit of upside there. I'm high on Lawrence. His jump from year 1 to year 2, and I know that it was a kind of a dumpster fire in year 1. So I think just having some adults in the room really helped him last year. I look for him to continue to develop and have even a better year this year. I think he's going to go for about 4,300 yards, 25 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, another couple hundred on the ground, and a couple touchdowns. I don't think he'll have 5 rushing touchdowns like he did last year, but I will say that one of those rushing touchdowns made me quite a bit of money because I put a first touchdown score bet on him on a Thursday night game. I can't remember if they were playing the Dolphins or the Jets, but ETN went down to the 1 yard line, and my eyes just went wide because I knew that they were going to sneak with him, and he made me about $500 on that $25 bet. So I'm high on Trevor Lawrence, probably because of that bet.
Hey, there's lots of reasons to be high on him this year. He started slow last season, but midway, man, they started coming on. He cut down on his dangerous late throws that he had the season prior. He's talented. He's close to breaking into the upper tier of quarterbacks in this league. He's somebody I'm targeting if I can't get one of the top quarterbacks in my draft this year.
Yeah, I think the biggest mitigating factor for him this season is going to be, number 1, he fumbles the ball a lot. And number 2, that offensive line is not very good. So I think he's going to be pressured up much more than, either he or Doug Peterson would like. He's got a good quick release. He has good decision-making skills, and he thinks quickly on his feet. But that's going to be a big problem for them that they're going to need to to work to improve as the season goes on and as his career goes on, because if you can't protect your quarterback, you got problems.
Yeah. What I do like is his best targeting is over the middle of the field. His 304 pass attempts, ranked 5th in the league. Only Josh Allen graded better on throws between the numbers that travel 10 or more yards down the field. I think that's a good thing with Calvin Ridley. They got some good receivers, but with that offensive line, it does worry me a bit that he won't have much time. But we'll see. They made a little bit of upgrades to their line. See what happens.
They start out with the Colts, and the Colts secondary is trash. So I could see him coming out of the gate pretty strong in week 1, especially with their Colts pass rush is okay, but I could see him really kind of lighting it up week 1.
QB9 off the board. Deshaun Watson going about 78 overall. Can he get back to 2020 where he led the league in passing? He had over 4,800 yards that season. I'd like to say that. I know the talent's still there. Let's see if this off season, the time for training camp and stuff that he's put in with his receivers pays off, because they've got a good fucking group there. He only played in 6 games last season and he was rusty. So let's hope it looks a lot better. Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman's there. Amari Cooper's a wide receiver 1. And Joko, DPJ, Donovan People-Jones, showed some flash last year. And let's not forget they got Nick Chubb. I think his numbers are capped a little bit just by what kind of offense Kevin Stefanski runs there. I like him for 3,800 yards passing, 23 touchdowns. I think he's still going to be a little rusty, at least in the beginning of the season. I got him at 14 picks. I will think he will rush the ball for at least 400 yards, though, and get 6 touchdowns on the ground. He's an definitely athletic as a rusher.
I don't like him. I was really troubled.
You don't like the man.
Well,
you don't like the man.
I don't know that I don't know if he can get back to. I don't know if he can get back to his Houston form. I was really shocked with having a full. I understand that there's some rust there, but you had nothing to do but work on your game while you were not playing and serving that suspension. And he can't.
Well, I mean, yeah, he could do some stuff, but he can't. He's going to have to hire fucking, some receivers, his buddies or whatever. Like, it's not the same.
It was troubling though that he just didn't look very good last year. I hope he turns it around and the Browns reap the benefits, but I'm weary of picking him up.
I hope he doesn't turn it around. I hope he sucks this year and the Browns are stuck with that ridiculous fully guaranteed contract.
Yeah.
But what do I think is going to happen? I think he's going to be fine. He's too good of a talent for last year to be what he is now. I think Amari Cooper is going to eat. I think Elijah Moore is going to eat. I think Chubb is going to eat. This is going to be one of the better offenses in the NFL. They've got an excellent line, so he's going to have plenty of protection. I think he's being drafted appropriately where he is. Upside is maybe QB5.
Yeah. With that offense, I guess he could finish up that high. That would be a huge jump for him, and he'd be.
Well, I mean, it's only 4 spots higher than where he's being drafted.
Yeah, there's no guarantee he's going to ever be that player again.
And I think that's baked into his ADP as well. If he would have played really well towards the end of last season, or if he looked bad the first 3 games, but you could see, all right, he's kind of knocking the rust off for the last 3, I think he'd be going a lot higher. The number 10 QB off the board is one with probably the biggest injury risk coming into the season. That's Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. When he was on the field last year, he was electric. 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, only 8 picks, completed just under 65% of his passes, led the league in just a shit ton of categories last year: touchdown percentage, yards per attempt, yards per completion, air yards per attempt. They're really airing the ball out there. And some of those numbers were also buoyed by just how elite the Dolphins receivers are after the catch.
Yeah.
As I alluded to, he's got the concussion concerns and he's done some jujitsu or whatever in the offseason, trying to figure out how not to fall and just get ragdolled if somebody like looks at him. If he stays on the field this season, 15 games, we'll call it, I think there's 4,500 yard upside there. I think there's 30 plus touchdown upside. He's not going to turn the ball over a whole hell of a lot either, but that's a big if. But you could do worse at number 94 overall as well.
You sure
but
could.
I'm going to back him up with somebody solid.
Yeah. Tua finished 13th or higher in EPA per play in every type of situation he faced. So whether it was clean pocket, pressured, blitzed, any shot, any formation, it didn't matter. He was pushing the ball down the fucking field to Waddle and Hill.
Yeah. He excelled throwing the ball down the field, particularly. Yes. He was better than Mahomes and Herbert on passes over 20 yards downfield.
I read that stat and I was like, damn, man, all right. Changed my mind a little. Well, let's see. Yeah. He's learned jiu-jitsu to learn how to fall correctly. Like I read.
Much.
I not a martial arts guy, so I have no idea. I'm not picking on the martial arts kingdom at all. Oh yeah. Mr. Miyagi. No, I'd be like, wax on. So fucking
one of those.
Yeah, man.
His injuries were scary, man, last year. And it seemed like, I mean, obviously once you have one concussion, you're more susceptible to another, but you hope that whatever he did in the offseason limits the chance for those injuries again, because if he can stay healthy, I mean, he might have been an MVP candidate last year with his numbers and his accuracy. It's kind of shocking how accurate and how productive he is at the deep balls. I'm with you, Matt. It's scary because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I would want to have a solid backup in the event that he gets hit again and is out for a few games or potentially the season. Number 11, just right at 100 off the board, is Dak Prescott of our favorite Dallas Cowboys. Last year he was injured. He only played 12 games. He did have 2,860 yards. He had just over a 66% completion percentage, 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, which was pretty high. I know that they've been working on that this year to figure out ways to reduce that with Mike McCarthy calling the plays. I think if he stays healthy, he's going to throw for just over 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. The offense is set up for success with CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard, and others. It's going to be a very high-powered offense. And like I said, Mike McCarthy calling the plays back there. They're going to be able to kind of change up what they did with Kellen Moore and use Dak's mobility a little bit more. You hope that it's Green Bay light. It's not going to be as productive as Rodgers was with McCarthy in those Green Bay years, but I see him having a pretty solid year if he stays healthy.
Yeah, Dak is a real solid but unspectacular guy. He's somebody you take if you're waiting on quarterback and you've loaded up elsewhere. If I've got 4 or 5 running backs I really like and 5 or 6 receivers I really like, and Dak Prescott is my QB1, I'm happy with that. Maybe I circle around later and take somebody else. Maybe I take Dak and Anthony Richardson later on just to maybe play a couple matchups and check out his upside. So yeah, I'd be happy with Dak.
Yeah, his play dipped a little bit last season. He's a good bounce back candidate this season, I believe. They shuffled the line a little bit, offensive line in the offseason this year, so hopefully they fix that. And they struggled last year to find a number 2 receiver to step up to combo with CeeDee Lamb. And I think they did that this offseason in adding Brandon Cooks. Pieces are there. They're going to have a good defense again.
I really like Brandon Cooks as a number 2 receiver. I think he's going to have a really good year in that number 2 role behind Lamb.
Yeah, I think he's going to help Dak a lot.
Absolutely. He put up decent numbers. Yeah, he put up decent numbers in Houston with absolute trash at quarterback.
There's a world where I actually like Kirk Cousins ahead of Dak this year. He's the number 12 QB off the board behind him, 102 overall at 4,500 yards last year, 29 touchdowns, 14 picks, and a couple rushing TDs. Led the league with 8 game-winning drives last season. That's probably not going to happen again. That will regress. He's been an overall QB. He's been an overall top 12 QB 6 times in the league. He'll probably never be elite at this point in his career. He's kind of like a Phillip Rivers, consistent weekly fantasy starter with occasional big game ability. And for being old, 30, what is he, 35? He's only missed 1 game in the last 8 years. So injury history suggests, or his lack of injury history suggests, he'll be out there every week. As long as Justin Jefferson's healthy, Cousins' high floor should be, assured. I like him for 4,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, 13 picks. I'll throw in a couple TDs on the goal line. You could do worse.
You like that, huh?
It's got a solid floor. Throw in, Hawkinson, KJ Osborne, and rookie Jordan Addison this season, and to see what Alexander Madison can help unload off of Kirk Cousins' shoulders. Yeah, I like Kirk at this spot. I like him 1 ahead of Dak. I'd probably flip flop.
He's going to have a ton of targets to throw at, right? I mean, the weapons they have there in Minnesota, and the fact that Dalvin Cook's no longer there, you could see them not relying on the running game as much. So you think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to throw the ball around and kind of sling it. So I'm high on Kirk Cousins. If you're in this area, I'm higher on him than I would be on Dak, just because of the lack of injury history. He's just one of those consistent guys that are going to have a couple of games where you're like, oh my gosh, you see what Kirk Cousins did yesterday, but you're never going to have that game where you're just regretting starting him in your lineup, where he's going to just bottom out and not give you any kind of numbers.
Yeah, he's quietly a top 10 guy every year, somebody who you can draft late, plug into your lineup, set it and forget it. You're right. He'll have a stinker or two, and he's going to have 2 or 3 weeks where he wins you that week.
Yeah. There's a lot, just the talent around him. It's intangible talent. Like, they're so good.
Number 13 off the board, going 115 overall, is a scrub that I've not been high on, and I've made that known. It's Geno Smith. Look, the dude, he had a good year last year, over 4,200 yards, threw a bunch of touchdown passes, 69% completion rate. It's fine. Good for him. It's last year. I'm not buying last year's numbers. As a career year, if you're drafting him, expecting him to put up the same kind of season he did last year, you're an idiot, and I want you in my league so I can beat you and take your money. Geno Smith will not be on my team this year. If I'm to the point in the draft where I'm looking at somebody like Geno, no, I'll take Goff later. No, thanks.
Yeah, I can see that. It was a feel-good story for him last season, I guess. He delivered. And they didn't draft a quarterback in the offseason. Gave him a contract.
They can get out of that contract after this year, though.
They can. I was really impressed by he was also led the league in completion percentage at 69.8. We've talked about that before, I think, in the division preview about the Seattle Seahawks. But he led the league in percentage in multiple categories, including plays under pressure. He was first. He stuck in the pocket. He can throw to all areas of the field. You could do worse. There's some talent there in the wide receiver room.
You could do worse. You could draft me.
Yeah. Or that's a title.
I'm not draft eligible. That is a title. That's a nice one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't buy Geno either. I think if Richardson had been there for Seattle at 5, if the Colts hadn't taken him, I think they would have taken Richardson and kept Geno, but set up a succession plan. And I think they probably still got one eye open, looking for a quarterback in next year's draft. So career year, but until you see him replicate that, I wouldn't rely on him as your fantasy quarterback. Maybe in an off week where there's nobody, or a bye week when there's nobody else available, but I can't see it happening again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a bye week guy. He's somebody who, yeah, there are going to be weeks when I take him in DFS, but
if you're in a 2 QB league or super flex and he slips, I wouldn't be mad if he was my QB2.
for sure.
If I had, somebody in the top 10, top 8 rather.
All right. Number 14 overall, right about the same draft position as Geno Smith. We're talking about Daniel Jones of the New York Giants. He's actually someone I would take before Geno and maybe even before Cousins or Dak. I think he's going to have a nice year. Last year, he had a solid year last year. He played 16 games, 3,200 yards passing, a 67% completion rate, 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So pretty efficient. The big differentiator for Jones was that he had 120 carries for 708 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground last year. So even in that offense with Saquon as your lead back, he got plenty of opportunities to run the ball. He got his money. He's going to be relied on to throw the ball through the air a little bit more. And they went out and traded for where you throw the ball in the air. I say stupid stuff. They went out and got Darren Waller, so they're giving him some weapons to focus on because that receiving core is a little bit lacking. So I look for his numbers to improve over last year slightly. I think he's going to have about 3,500 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and he'll still have 600 yards rushing for maybe 5 touchdowns on the ground or so. So not as prolific as last year on the ground, but still pretty solid for a QB.
Yeah, he finally had his breakout season last year. That was expected of a high first-round draft pick. The guy just cannot get the ball down the field. Regardless of the circumstance, whether he's under pressure, pocket, clean, like any play action, any fucking situation, he was 28th or lower in ADOT. So hopefully these additions, Darren Waller, and some people stepping up can help that. But if he can't get that to happen, then defenses aren't, he's going to have a tough fucking time this year.
Yeah, I believe in Brian Dable, the coach, more than I believe in Daniel Jones, the player. And I think Dable is going to be able to coax a little bit more out of him this year. I think he'll finish probably around QB 10. I think he'll end up being a QB 1 that you can plug in and play every week. I'm not super thrilled about it, but considering where you're getting him, I'd take him over Geno Smith all day long.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess Dable was able to get a lot out of him with a less than stellar supporting cast, and they've made some upgrades. So I can see where you're going there. There's definitely still room to improve, though.
And we've talked about it already, but I think Waller's primed for a big year. They brought him in knowing that Daniel Jones thrives in those short and intermediate yard or passing situations. So set him up for success and see if you can develop that downfield game as you go along. But if it's not broke, don't fix it. They had a pretty successful year last year doing what they did with his skill set. And I think that they're just going to tailor the offense to continue to accentuate his positives.
QB 15 off the board, Anthony Richardson, going about 120, 121 overall. I don't agree with the Colts starting him. I wish they could have just let him actually season for this year, get him some time. He's a very young quarterback, not a lot of time being a passer. It was only 1 year. Fuck, wasn't it?
Yeah. 13 games. That's all they talk about.
13 games. He's bigger, stronger, and faster, and has a bigger arm than Jalen Hurts. So I expect something here in 2 or 3 years out of him, but not this season. He's definitely the highest ceiling of any quarterback in his class this year. The scrambling upside keeps him fantasy relevant. So he's kind of reminiscent of Justin Fields. He is just able to run away from defenders. He's 6'4", 244 pounds. He's going to break some tackles. If you compare him with a safer QB like a Kirk Cousins and you have the spot in your league and can afford the bench spot, it's a solid move to make. He's a 9th or 10th round selection, in my opinion. If it's just a regular draft, you don't have a rookie draft. I like him for 2,700 yards passing, 15 touchdowns. No. I like him for 2,700 yards, 13 touchdowns and 15 picks. I think he's going to have some issues this year with accuracy and able to not being able to read NFL coverages quite yet. He's going to get confused. I think he will have almost 900 yards rushing, 7 TDs on the ground.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys watched that Thursday night game against the Eagles, and granted, it was their second and third string defenses, and the line did not look great. Richardson looked okay. There are going to be moments this year where the Colts are going to look very smart for drafting him. His athleticism is off the charts. He is so fast getting out of the pocket. But there are going to be games where the Colts are going to look pretty foolish for drafting him as well. I don't hate that they're starting him day one. I understand the risk you run by starting him day one, and as opposed to letting him sit for a year and kind of learn the game. But his lack of reps, he needs to get out there, and I think they're okay with him failing and making some foolish mistakes while he's out there, and hopefully learning from them quickly, because like you said, Kyle, the ceiling there, the floor is the ceiling, or the ceiling is the roof, as Michael Jordan once said. So the floor is the ceiling. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, his ceiling, not necessarily this year, but we'll say 2-3 years from now, is QB1. Just based on his athletic ability, his talent, his arm talent, his ability to run. And he's just, you mentioned it earlier, he's a big dude. You're not going to arm tackle him.
No.
But he does mechanically need to improve. He needs to improve his accuracy, and that's going to come with time and repetition. He's going to have limited upside. It's going to be isolated to probably a few weeks where if I'm starting him, it's going to be strictly matchup based, or, he's a dart throw in DFS, something like that. 16th dude off the board is none other than Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. Last season, he was, I think, better than anybody anticipated. Almost 4,500 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, only had 7 interceptions, and he only had 1 turnover in the last 10 games of the year. There's going to be regression in that department. Just that's not a sustainable rate for him. So the question there is just how much. He was also elite in domes last year. Averaged like 275 yards and 2.5 touchdowns per game in 10 dome games. This season, they've got 12. So I think he's going to come in a little bit higher than last year. I'll call it 4,600 yards passing, 33 touchdowns, and 11 picks.
So I'm going to use your best case argument against you. Was last year best case Jared Goff? But can he improve on the numbers he put up last year?
He put up better numbers than that when he was with the Rams.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the relationship that him and Ben Johnson have, that's an offense that's tailored to his strengths.
That's a good point. I think Ben he's properly rated as a coordinator, because he's a really good offensive coordinator. I'm surprised he didn't get a gig in the offseason.
Me too.
Yeah, he will eventually. You mentioned his system. Yeah, Goff was one of the best play action quarterbacks last season. He finished second best passing grade under play action. He had the most touchdowns with 16 with play action. His passer rating was over 124. They're going to do that again. They got all that talent. Jameer, it's going to be fun to watch. God. I'm a Lion. I'm so high on Lions.
I'm a Lion.
But hope they don't crush my heart by Thanksgiving. You could do worse. I like him a little bit better than some.
You could do worse.
I think Goff will finish as top 10, top 12 QB. He'll be right there. So. Low end QB1, high end QB2. Somebody you can play 80% of the games with confidence.
Yep. Number 17 off the board is Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets. Sound familiar? A longtime Green Bay quarterback going to New York and trying to win a Super Bowl. So He played in all 17 games last year, just under a 65% completion percentage, 3,695 yards, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He's in a new place. That offensive line is not as good as it was in Green Bay. He's going to have some chemistry building to do with some of those receivers, although he did bring in his guys, Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb. So there should be some continuity there from coming over from Green Bay. They're set up for success. It's Super Bowl or bust for them, and that's the reason why they brought Rodgers in. I think he's going to have a solid year. I think he's going to have 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. I think they're going to run the ball a lot, especially now that Dalvin Cook's on board. And just because of that line, the questions with the offensive line, I don't see him being quite as prolific as he was in Green Bay, but he's going to have a solid year. He's a guy you could plug in on bye weeks as well.
This is the best quarterback the Jets have had since Joe Namath. Right? Gotta be, right? I don't know.
Vinny Testaverde?
No.
Yeah, he had some good years there. Chad Pennington.
Let's just hope this new environment unlocks Rodgers, decent play, best play again. I don't think it's going to be MVP caliber. I think him and Garrett Wilson are going to be hooking up a lot. I think I would push up his touchdowns just a little bit more. You could do worse. You could. And I mean, I guess I wouldn't want to draft him right off the bat. I'd want to let them work out the kinks the first, month and a half of the season or something. But there's a point where he could be on a waiver wire. Keep an eye out for him there 6 weeks in and see what's going on and scoop him up, because once they start meshing, connecting, I think Garrett Wilson and him are going to thrive this year together.
I agree. The last time that Rodgers and Hackett were paired together, Devontae Adams got just every target you could ever want. I think the same will happen with Garrett Wilson as well, like you guys have mentioned. Lazard will be productive, and Corey Davis retiring was kind of a surprise there, so that might open up the door for somebody like Mecole Hardman to get a few extra targets, helping to take the top off the defense. It'll be a run-first offense, but Rodgers will have his 3 or 4 games this year where he goes for 302, 303 maybe, but I don't see many of those games. I think he's more a 250 and 1.5 kind of guy at this point.
QB 18 off the board, Russell Wilson, going 136 overall, played in 15 games last season. It was a dumpster fire disaster in Denver. Nathaniel Hackett was just not a good head coach. He might be a good coordinator, but not a good head coach. Russell Wilson was sacked 55 times for a league-leading negative 368 yards. This guy is a sack master. In his first 10 seasons, he's sacked 427 times. Trivia question: can anybody name the only other player sacked 400 plus times in their first 10 seasons?
David Carr.
Nope.
Andrew Luck.
Nope. It is Randall Cunningham. I definitely wouldn't have thought that. It wasn't on my radar at all. I think the Sean Payton effect's going to help put Russell Wilson in some situations to excel. Yeah, if you're if you got a bye week and you're streaming, and maybe you go. I don't know. I don't like him this year. I had him last year on one of my teams because there was nobody else better, and I really thought maybe they'd actually do fucking something last year. But it was a fucking disaster. I expect kind of more of the same this year. Middle of the pack, but he's got to stay healthy. 3,600 yards, 22 touchdowns. I think he'll have about a dozen picks. He will run the ball still. He'll get his 300 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns on the ground, but not somebody I'm targeting at all.
Yeah, Russ is done. Piss on him. I was never a fan of his anyway, and I was happy to see his ass go to Denver and just shit on his shoes. Sean Payton's going to come in and try and turn him into something that he's not, which is another smaller, more annoying, less accurate Drew Brees. He's at his best when he gets outside of the pocket, but that's not really what the Sean Payton offense is built around. We'll see how he does. I'll be watching from afar. His ass ain't going to be anywhere near one of my teams. If you want to draft him, go ahead and make that mistake.
I will not be making that mistake. I am just I'm in the same boat as you guys. I do not like Russell Wilson. I think he peaked during his rookie year or his rookie contract, and then decided he was something he wasn't. And Seattle was smart and got rid of him while they could. And now he's Denver's problem to deal with because they handed him that huge contract. So saw that Jerry Jeudy went off the field in practice last week. So not sure the extent of that injury. I don't think it's too serious, but still, that's one less weapon out there for Russ. And he just does not, his game does not fit to what Sean Payton does. And I don't think Sean Payton can clean this mess up.
Somebody equally as shitty as Russell Wilson is Derek Carr, who landed his way in New Orleans. Last season, his ass got benched for the last 2 games on a shitty Raiders team. Went for 3,500 yards, 24 touchdowns, 14 picks, completed about 60% of his passes. He's not somebody at this point in his career who's going to lead an elite explosive offense, but he does feed his primary target. Amari Cooper's been fed. He fed Darren Waller in the past. He fed Devontae last year. So I think Chris Olave is going to see a bump up in his target share, regardless of what Michael Thomas does, which I'm pretty sure he's toast at this point anyway. They've got Rashid Shaheed and Jawan Johnson, some younger guys with some possible upside there. But I think this is going to be a very run-heavy offense. They're going to hide Derek Carr a bit. He's not a quarterback who's going to go out and win you a bunch of games. If you can hope for him to be a competent game manager, I think that's going to be your best route for success. But in fantasy, I don't need any game managers on my team. I want somebody who can go out there and win, and Derek Carr just isn't it. And I made that mistake last season.
Yes, you did. He's going to go there and try and reignite that Saints offense after being a Raider for 9 years. He's that type of quarterback. He's that guy that he takes 2 steps forward and then he always takes a step back. I don't know. I don't love it this year. He's probably got his best, well-rounded supporting cast he's ever had, offensively and defensively. So it's time to put up or shut up. He's got no excuses this year.
Yeah, I don't love him either. I think he's just another guy at this point. Not that he was ever the guy. He had that 1 year back in 2015 or whatever, and that was 8 years ago. So, yeah, I'd stay away from him. Speaking of guys I'd stay away from, number 20 off the board is Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. Hasn't played really any meaningful football since 2019 at Utah State, where he put up okay numbers. I don't even know if they're relevant at this point, but he passed for 3,400 yards. He had 20 touchdowns and 17 picks in his last year at Utah State. And then the Packers drafted him, let him sit for a few years, and he's poised to be the guy in Green Bay going forward. Can he live up to the expectations after following Favre and Aaron Rodgers? I don't know. They're saying good things about him coming out of camp, and they're going to rely on the run and their defense a lot. So hopefully there's not too much pressure on him out of the gate. I look for him to throw for around 3,200 yards, 20 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Just the fact that I haven't really seen, he didn't blow me away when he was in college, and I wouldn't be comfortable putting him as my fantasy quarterback. So it's kind of a wait and see for him, in my opinion. See what he does this year, and maybe you look at bumping him up a little bit next year if he has a successful season.
I'll pass on him this year. He's looked good in the preseason, but that's against guys who are going to be selling insurance and detailing cars here in about 2 weeks. There is a lot of room for growth. We're going to get to see what this Matt LaFleur offense really looks like without somebody like a top 5 all-time QB running it. There's a little bit of talent on the outside. I'm kind of high on Romeo Doubs. But he's somebody who, if you've got a deep bench or you're in a super flex, maybe he's your QB3, somebody who is going to be a bye week fill-in for you. And hopefully the week that you need him, you've got a halfway decent matchup. The athleticism will help too. I don't think he's going to be as bad as somebody like Russ or Derek Carr. I think he'll end up somewhere around like maybe QB 18, QB 17.
I could see it. We just don't know a lot about him. He attempted only 21 passes last season. The only evidence that we have that he is ready is that they moved on from Rodgers. I mean, I've seen some tape, not some tape, just some training camp clips, and they had some of those accuracy drills, and he was actually doing pretty well. That's what I want to see is, can he be accurate? Can he push the ball down the field? This is, not the year to probably target him. It's going to be next year if he does well this year. Let's see what he does first. Like Matt said, he could be your third QB on your league in a super flex, and I'd be fine with that. On to Brock Purdy, number 21 QB off the board, going 177 overall. Should be used to that, Mr. Irrelevant. In the 22 draft, played 9 games last season, started 5, had 1,300 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, and 1 rush TD. He's kind of more of a game manager, so that's, you got to temper your expectations. That kind of lowers his fantasy rankings and what he can do. Great supporting cast around him. Got plenty of yak specialists in Debo, McCaffrey, and George Kittle, and even Brandon Ayuk you could throw into that. That Ayuk and Purdy that was his favorite receiver last year. So I know why Matt's on. One of the reasons Matt's high. The big knock on Purdy is his kryptonite is deep throws. Completed just 5 of his 13 regular season passes, over 20 yards or more. Had 3 turnovers on that as well. So not good. Think he can win games just because of that supporting cast around him and the outstanding defense that San Francisco is sure to have again this season. 3,600 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, I'll say only 9 picks, and I think he'll get 2 TDs on the ground as well. He's going to make those playmakers look good. He seems pretty accurate to put the ball where it needs to be. And he's had a whole offseason to actually learn, the 49ers system instead of just being a rookie and getting thrown into it midseason due to injuries.
I think Brock Purdy can have a really long career in the NFL. He's not somebody who's going to go out and actively lose you games, but he's not going to go win you any games either. He's like the modern day Brian Hoyer, I think.
Yeah.
But just because of all the talent that surrounds him on the field, he is somebody who warrants consideration, not as somebody who is an every week starter. I think he's fine. He's somebody who you can hopefully count on for 225, touchdown and a half. Hopefully he doesn't throw a pick that game. Just if you need a solid floor of points, that's what he is.
Yeah. Shanahan's usually got QB friendly offense. That's kind of what he runs. He's known for that too. So I think it makes him more comfortable. I like him this year where he's at. I'd take him.
Yeah, the talent around him is what makes him this high on the list. If he were in another offense like Arizona or something like that, he wouldn't even really be sniffing the field, but he's perfect for the Shanahan offense. And I think he's going to have decent numbers because of it. I don't think it's going to be because of him. It's going to be to your point, Matt, the talent and the system that Shanahan has built there.
It's fitting that these two quarterbacks are right next to each other. Number 22 QB, 183 overall, Kenny Pickett, Brock Purdy of the East. He did fine last season as a rookie. I think the one thing he has over Brock Purdy is he's a little bit more athletic than he is and can get outside the pocket a little bit better. So there's a little bit of rushing upside there for him. He really struggled with intermediate throws between 10 and 19 yards. I think part of that was just due to how bad the offensive line was last year. He didn't really have a whole lot of time, but they were smart to address it this offseason. He's got a rock solid wide receiver on the outside and Deontay Johnson to throw to. He's got presumably an ascending big play receiver in George Pickens. They've got a solid tight end in Freiermuth and an inefficient but still solid running back in Najee Harris. So he's got some talent around him, nowhere near the degree that San Francisco has, but I think there is some room for gains. I think he'll go up maybe 3,100, 3,200 yards passing. He'll flirt with 20 touchdowns, and he throws his fair share of picks. I think that's still going to be an issue. I say about 12 picks this year. He's a desperation dart throw kind of player, somebody who is likely going to be on the wire all season long. So there's no sense in drafting him. Just know that he'll probably be there come bye weeks if you need somebody to fill in. Like if you've taken one of the elite QBs, one of the top 5 guys, and you just need somebody for that week. But I think that's pretty much the extent of his purpose.
Yeah, he took over week 4, I think, from Trubisky. Where's that guy at now? Is he still there?
Yeah.
Jesus. I like Pickett in a lot of ways, and then I don't. His play, like outside of structure, kind of gives him a high floor. But he still needs to improve in the pocket. And even from a clean pocket, he struggled last year, which is a problem that he had in college too. So I'm looking for a jump for him. I guess I kind of like him where he is, I suppose.
Yeah. I like him a little bit better than Brock Purdy in the sense from a pure quarterback perspective. Purdy's in a better system and has a better supporting cast. But they are very similar players, and I know we've touched on that quite a bit, so I'm not going to do that again. But I think he'll have a better year than he did last year. Look for him to take that year 2 leap and have a little bit more production there. And if Pittsburgh wants to go anywhere, they're going to need to rely on him to produce a little bit more than what he did last year. Number 23, Kyler Murray, right at 188 overall. Not somebody I'm crazy about. So we'll get through this and just kind of get your guys' thoughts as well. He played in 11 games last year. He injured his ACL, had a 66% completion percentage, 2,368 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks. He did have some upside on the ground. He had 418 yards rushing, 6.2 average, and he had 3 touchdowns. I wouldn't touch him with the 10-foot pole for a lot of reasons. One being, I don't know when he's going to come back. He could be back week 2. It could be week 12. And that team is just not very good. So even if he is healthy, how soon do you want to throw him out there and risk that he gets injured again? Because the supporting cast is just not good. They have James Conner. They have Hollywood Brown. But outside of that, there's not a lot of talent on the outside. And it's been touched on quite a bit. His lack of willingness to study the game and work on the mental side of things, the homework that needs to be done has been lacking. So not sure that he's going to even be there long term. They may try to get him out late in the season just to show other teams that he's healthy and he can move and he might be a viable quarterback option for a team in need. But where this team's going to be and how bad they're going to be looking for a quarterback in the draft next year and kind of do to him what they did to Josh Rosen a few years back.
Yeah, at this point in the draft, he's essentially free. So if you've got 3 or 4 IR spots, maybe you take a chance, stash him on IR and see what happens. But the further we get into the season without him playing, the less likely it is he's going to play, I think, just because what's the point? Why mess up your, likely top 3 pick because you brought Kyler Murray back and you won 2 of your last 3.
Matthew Stafford, QB 24 off the board, going 188 overall. He only played 9 games last season, dealt with several different injuries, concussions, and something else. Spinal?
Hit a neck injury? Yeah.
Neck, spinal. Threw for 2,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 picks. He's entering his 15th season. He's 35. I think the abuse that he took in Detroit for them many years is just really taking a toll on his body and his 4 kids that he's got stuff as well. Probably. How much does he have left in the tank? That's what you're gonna from a fantasy perspective. He's often solid lately, but really dominant. Hasn't eclipsed 19 points in any of his last 13 games, despite playing many of those games with Cooper Kupp. So the Rams offense is probably not going to be as good unless Kupp and Stafford are on the field. Somebody else has to step up there in the receiver room, either Van Jefferson or Tutu Atwell. I like him for 3,400 yards, 22 touchdowns, 15 picks, and I don't think he'll make it through the season. I love me some Matty Stafford, but I don't think he'll make it through this year.
I don't either. I wouldn't be shocked actually if it was Tyler Higbee that was second behind Kupp in targets in that offense.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. He would led the team in targets last year because Kupp was gone.
He's on the wrong side of 30. He's on the downside of his career. I'll be surprised if he plays more than 10 or 12 games, just given the state of affairs there with the offensive line and the talent around him. And it's not due to him as a competitor. I mean, pound for pound, he's probably one of, if not the toughest guy in the NFL. He'll run through a wall for you as much as he can, but that don't mean shit when it comes to fantasy.
No.
I think his absolute ceiling is like maybe QB 18. Yeah. I can't envision a scenario where I would want him on my team, but if I'm going to have him on my team, I want it in the beginning of the season as opposed to having to try and rely on somebody like him towards the end of the year after he's taken a beating for 7, 8, 9, 10 games.
Yeah, he didn't really push the ball downfield in his games last year. He kind of became more of a dinker and dunker, and you just saw that. And a little part of me, of course, was sad about that, but it's just he's about done. I'm glad he got a Super Bowl though, and I appreciate his time. He was in Detroit.
Yeah, I think the only way I would play him is if I had no other option, and there was if you have a top flight QB on an early bye, because to your point, Matt, it's as the season goes on, he just gets banged up and he's getting older, so that's not going to get better. And that offense just there's not a lot there. Kupp is a number one target, but can he stay healthy as well? So much of the same as what you guys said. I agree that he's pretty much a last resort for me at QB.
Yeah, he'll be on the wire later on in the year if you need somebody, but
right. And their Super Bowl hopes are very slim, of course, and they could be 0-5 to start the season. So that might dictate a lot of things too. Maybe they'll Mark Stetson Bennett out there. I have no idea. No sense getting Matthew Stafford killed.
All right, that's going to wrap up our fantasy quarterback preview, and it's also going to wrap up our fantasy position previews for this season. Let us know what you think. If you need some advice, give us a holler. I'll do my best to help you out. Kyle will be there for you, and Ramey will probably find a way to make it about the Cubs, but we'll work together to get you the information that you need.
Now we've come to the portion of our broadcast. Nope, that's stupid.
The portion of our broadcast.
All right, I get the esteemed privilege to introduce the Pick Sixer this week. It is top 6 sports busts. I'll get her started. Sam Bowie had the unfortunate distinction of being picked right before Michael Jordan in the loaded 84 draft. He had a decent rookie campaign, showed promise as a rim protector and inside scorer, and then injuries became his thing. The next 3 seasons were a disaster, only played a total of 60 games. After 4 seasons, the Blazers traded him for a first rounder for a real center, Buck Williams. Next, in no particular order, Kajana Carter, first overall in the 95 draft. Awesome with Penn State in 94, ran for over 1,500 yards and 23 touchdowns, averaging a whopping 7.8 yards per carry. He barely eclipsed 1,000 yards in his entire NFL career. Third carry of his rookie preseason, he tore his ACL, tried working back over the next couple seasons, had some other injury issues, dislocated kneecap. Jesus, I can't even imagine. A torn rotator cuff. Moved on to the Redskins and the Saints, and he retired by the 04 season. And you'll see some local stuff here with the Lions. Charles Rodgers, second pick in the 03 NFL draft by the Detroit Lions. In 2 seasons at MSU, he had over 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns. And then he got drafted by the Lions and just had like 2 consecutive seasons with injuries to his collarbone. and he then developed an addiction to painkillers. He played parts of 3 seasons, caught a total of 36 passes for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was out of football by 05. Died in November 19 of liver failure, cancer, fortunately. Next Lion that fucking fucked up and they drafted and didn't produce. Joey Harrington, number 3 overall in the 02 draft. Awesome in his last 2 years at Oregon, over 5,700 yards passing, 49 fucking touchdowns to go with 14 rushing touchdowns, finished 4th in the 01 Heisman vote. He just couldn't translate his game to the pros. He was 26-50 over his time with the Lions. And his TD to interception rate was 79-85. In 05, he was traded to the Dolphins. He bounced around the league. So next, Lawrence Phillips. God, what an electric runner for the Nebraska Cornhuskers back in the 90s, early 90s. 94, he had over 1,800 yards and 16 touchdowns, averaged 6 a carry. Dude had all the physical tools to be a bell cow running back in the NFL, but he just had way too many problems off the field. Everywhere he went, he was found with trouble, I guess. He ended up in prison. While in prison, killed his cellmate. And then was charged for first-degree murder in that cellmate's death. And they found him and killed himself in January of 16. And that leaves us with the biggest bust ever, in my fucking opinion, Darko Milicic. Second pick of the 03 draft by the Detroit Pistons. He had excellent size, skill, athleticism. He was a 7-footer. He was selected right after LeBron James. And after him was Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. He bounced around surprisingly, he bounced around in the league for 10 years. I didn't realize that. He's now a farmer in Serbia. Technically, he's NBA champion. He won a championship there in 04 with the Pistons. He didn't contribute shit to it. But Joe Dumars, what the fuck were you thinking?
He also tried out MMA, I think, in 2014.
He did.
Human victory signal.
He's growing apples and cherries in Serbia. He ain't doing no fucking MMA.
Okay, you're going to see a couple overlap here, but I've got a fairly kind of a different list. So, in no particular order, Michael Olowokandi, the first pick in the 1998 NBA draft by the Los Angeles Clippers. He was cursed from the moment they drafted him. Just wasn't a productive guy. His best season was 2002, 2003, and he only had 12 points and 9 rebounds. They were really intrigued with his size coming out of the University of the Pacific, and just never lived up to the hype. So he is my first off the board. Next up is Greg Oden. I know you guys will love this. First pick in the 2007 draft by the Portland Trail Blazers out of Ohio State University. Only played 105 games in his entire NBA career over 4 seasons between Portland and Miami. Just had a litany of knee issues that prevented him from ever really becoming the success that he was in college for a year. So also was drafted right before Kevin Durant. So I think a theme that you see with these lists and these discussions is who was picked around these people, because I'll go next is Darko. I'm not going to spend any more time on it because I don't want you guys to get depressed. Number 2, pick from the Memphis Grizzlies. And I'm not sad as a Pacers fan, but it makes you sad to think about what those Pistons could have been had they drafted Carmelo or Wade or Bosh or really anybody but Darko, if they could have extended that run a few more years. So Sam Bowie is also on my list. Again, second pick in the 84 draft. He was taken off the board right behind Hakeem Olajuwon, right before Michael Jordan. So one interesting tidbit about this particular pick is Bob Knight was actually a consultant for the Trailblazers, and he told them that they should pick Michael Jordan because he had coached him in the Olympics that year. And they needed a center, so they told him, we're not going to pick Jordan. We need a center. And Bob Knight told him, pick Jordan and play him at center. He's that good. So yeah, they really messed up by not drafting Michael Jordan, but at the time they needed a center, so that's who they drafted. So my next two are both quarterbacks. First up, Jamarcus Russell, the first pick in the 2007 NFL draft out of LSU. He could throw the ball farther than Uncle Rico, and he had a hell of a game against Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. And for that reason, Al Davis and the Oakland Raiders took him number 1 overall. He played 3 seasons in the NFL before he was out of the league. Never even came close to the success that he had in college. And like I said, after 3 years, he was out of the league. So litany of issues there.
He was the best quarterback throwing passes 70 yards from his knees.
Yes, because you do that a lot,
right?
In
all the time.
football, yeah,
it happens all the time. But he would be the champion of that.
Yeah, he sure would. He would be in the Hall of Fame,
right?
And my number 1 is Ryan Leaf, second pick in the '98 draft, right behind Peyton Manning by the San Diego Chargers. I think a lot of it is just trying to play up a good story, but there was a lot of stories saying that the Colts really struggled between Manning and Leaf, but really there was no question who was the better quarterback. Leaf had a good college career, don't get me wrong, but he just never seemed to be able to get the mental side of it when he got to the league. And I can't blame you. You're 22 years old and you're getting thrown a ton of money, and all of a sudden you're the star in San Diego. He didn't take it well. He only played 4 years in the NFL, played a year in Dallas, and just could never replicate the success. Sounds like Jamarcus Russell couldn't replicate the success he had in college at Washington State. Also had a litany of off the field issues, addictions to painkillers and things like that, which got himself into some trouble. But he seems to have kind of cleaned his act up, and I know he's kind of on a lot of the sports talk radio shows, and seems like he's kind of figured life out and is in a much better place. So good on him for that.
Hey, it's my turn.
Yay! This should be interesting.
Yes, in a particular order.
It'll be interesting to see.
Starting off at number 6, Trent Richardson. He was a first-round pick of the Cleveland Browns out of Alabama. Looked like a stud in college, got to the NFL. Rookie year, he had 11 touchdowns. But anyone who watched the tape also saw that he had absolutely zero running back vision. The Colts saw that and said, hey, I'll give up a first for him. They brought him to Indy, where he just essentially flamed out after a few years. Number 5. Yes.
Real quick. Do you know who the Browns took with that pick that the Colts traded?
Johnny Manziel.
Yep, that is correct.
Another bust.
Yep.
Number 5, Brian Bosworth. The Boz linebacker out of Oklahoma. He was just the cat's ass when he was in college, talking all that shit. He got to the NFL, played in 24 games across 3 seasons, got hurt, got his ass run over by Bo Jackson, and pretty much faded into oblivion, as Mike Tyson would say.
Yeah.
Number 4, we're going to switch up and go to baseball. Mark Pryor. For somebody who had supposedly perfect mechanics, man, did he get hurt a lot. He turned in 3 halfway decent seasons and 1 good year, but just given where they took him and the expectations that were on him, he definitely qualifies as a bust for me. Sticking with baseball, number 3, Brian Taylor. He was the number 1 overall pick in the 1991 draft by the New York Yankees. Was pretty solid in the minor leagues, and after the 1993 season, he got in a fight defending his brother and suffered a very serious shoulder injury. Never made it to the pros, was never the same afterwards. He lost like 8 miles an hour off his fastball, and he was toast. Now we're going to get creative for these next 2. Kyle, you mentioned Joey Harrington and Charles Rodgers, but you didn't bring up the man that drafted them, Matt Millen. He was a really good player, but man, was he ass as an executive. He was there for quite a few years. Like you mentioned, drafted Joey Harrington, took wide receivers 3 years in a row. And ultimately, his tenure culminated with him getting fired partially way through a 0-16 season in 2008. Those were dark times for us Lions fans.
But it's better now.
It's
better now. And number 1 on my list, Urban Meyer.
Love it.
He was a damn good college coach, but he got to the NFL and was just absolute garbage. Didn't even make it through his first season with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had the October bar fiasco where he decided he wasn't going to fly with the team. He was going to hang out in a bar with his hand down the pants of some co-ed.
Allegedly.
Look, I don't blame him. I probably would have done the same thing, but that's why I'm not coaching in the league, and that's why he's not coaching in the league either. He's now back with Fox trying to rehabilitate his image as a decent human being and competent coach. Like you said before, talking about Sean Payton, Ramey, sometimes it just takes you to take a year away from the game and go on TV, and everybody thinks you're a genius again. Hello, Otis. But yeah,
there's a pussy in your face.
Piss on Urban Meyer. He's my biggest bust of all time.
That was a good one. Very creative. I never even thought of entering the coaching ranks on that at all. Kudos. I like that. Fuck Urban Meyer.
Yep.
That wraps up our Pick Sixer portion. Let us know what you think. Like, comment, share. Tell us who's right or who's wrong. Thanks a lot.
All right, it's time for our back in the day replay portion of our podcast, where we look back at history and sports and just history in general, depending on what mood Kyle's in. I'll kick it off. This week in 1921, the owner of the Acme Packing Company in Green Bay, Wisconsin, bought a football team for the city. J.E. Clare paid tribute to those who worked in his plant by naming the team the Green Bay Packers.
FT.
Kyle, what do you have?
August 31st, 1909, the cork-centered baseball was patented by the A.J. Reach Company, invented by Benjamin Shibe. The cork center offered more durability and greater elasticity, thereby increasing the batting without affecting the fielding, resulted in a more livelier ball. The ball was introduced in the American League in 1911. 300 hitters jumped from 8 in 1910 to 27 in 1911. And you could expect ERA to increase as well. It did, from 253 in 1910 to 334 in 1911. This was the beginning of the live ball era.
Do you know what they used before that?
Rubber.
No, they used to go into the tenements of New York City and shave the heads of small immigrant children and use their hair for the center of the baseballs.
All right. Rubber. Okay.
My back in the day replay segment portion contribution. August 29th, 2012, the USADA strips Lance Armstrong of his 7 Tour de France championships.
Close.
He was a cheater. He was a scam artist. He was a con artist. Fucking yellow wristbands everywhere were so annoying. And yeah, turns out he's not to be trusted.
No, I almost did that one. I'm glad I didn't.
Me too.
Yeah,
I would have just made something up on the fly.
I would have been, I don't know what I would have been. I don't know. Germany was preparing and had amassed a big portion of their army, Polish border, this time in 1939.
Yeah.
I would have thrown that one up.
They would invade a little while later, kicking off World War Dose.
All right, on September 1st, 4 days later.
That closes out our back in the day replay segment. Let us know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, share it. Let us know if we're stupid, smart. If you have a fun fact that you want to share, be happy to hear it.
And that is going to close out this week's episode. It was a lot of fun going over these fantasy previews the past few weeks. A big thanks to all of you who watch and help make this possible. A big thanks to Rocky's Pizza of Swartz Creek, Michigan. And a big thanks to the two of you. It's always fun getting together here and recording these and talking some sports and having a few laughs and then hours of painstaking editing and uploading and all the shit that comes afterwards. But it's a labor of love because we sure as shit ain't making no money off this.
Nope. It's fun. It's creative. It's good. Don't worry, college football fans. We haven't forgot about you. We'll be talking a bit of college football next week. Be prepared.
Yeah, big weekend next weekend, and then we'll be looking forward to opening night of the NFL as well. So, a lot of stuff to talk about coming in the next few weeks.
Absolutely,
gonna be fun. Be interesting to see what happens as college football kicks off and NFL kicks off, and the Lions cover the spread against Kansas City.
You could certainly do worse.
You could do worse.
All right, everyone. Until next time, we will talk to you later.